We have salespeople that are winging it in sales every single day. You know what they sound like? They sound like a person who just kind of picks up the guitar once in a while, plays a right note here or there, maybe knows where the rest of the band is doing, maybe, and it gets in front of 2,000 people and starts to improvise. Sometimes they get lucky. Most of the time they fall flat. You know what I mean? Process, approach, attitude.
Welcome to the Sales Made Simple podcast. This podcast is dedicated to helping overwhelmed outdoor living professionals, landscapers, and hardscapers just like you increase your closing rate to over 75% without doubling your workload so you can build a seven-figure business that doesn't need you. I'm your host, Joshua Gillow. Let's dig in. Hello, everybody, and welcome back. Dan Bai is with me again for his final episode, for at least this round. I'm sure you'll be back on the podcast again. And today we're going to focus on why you aren't closing 10 out of 10 of your sales calls and what to do about it. So Dan, welcome back to the show.
Hey, Greg. Glad to be here. This is good stuff. All stuff I love talking about. Fantastic.
Man, we cranked it through. Last week we were talking about tonalities and how to set up that detective tonalities. If you didn't listen to that episode, go back and listen to it. It's a lot of jewels dropped in there. And if you just listen to this package of 4 episodes that we're doing, it could change. It will change your closing rate and your ability to serve your clients. That's really what it's all about. We're not selling crap here. We're serving. Once we understand that difference, then all of a sudden when you get to that front door, you're not all shaky and crazy because you're going to put on a performance. Forget that. Throw that out. That's not how this works. We're going to serve. We walk up to the door. We say, God, please guide my voice, guide my questions. Let me help this client as best I can. Then you move in the house. The next thing you know, magic happens because your heart's in the right place. Money will follow because of that mindset. Now, so if we're 10 out of 10, which sounds insane because our average in our industry is 3 out of 10. So Dan, what do you think?
Oh, man. Where do I start? First of all, I know we talk about statistics, 3 out of 10, 10 out of 10. Those are historical statistics. But when you're in the process and you're preparing for a sales call or you're preparing for a site visit, one of the things you can't be thinking about are your stats. One of the things that you can't be talking about is your revenue. One of the things you can't be talking about is, the bills you have to pay. I know that's very, very difficult, but that is the game because the people who are dedicated to a process and approach and attitude, and teach this to my kids in their sports, I teach this to my clients that are doing things that are very high stakes, which is that if you're not completely surrounding your experience with your clients with a good process, with a good approach and a good attitude, you're sunk. The other way to approach this is all about outcomes. That's not healthy either. You have to be married to a good process, a great approach, and a wonderful attitude. And that is the secret to the outcomes that many of you want to eventually have. 10 out of 10 close, 9 out of 10 close. The best salespeople in the world do not look at those stats until afterwards, like at the end of the week or the end of the month, and they look at it historically. But when they're in someone's home and they're on the phone with someone, they're working on process, approach, and attitude. It's the only thing. I'm going to drive this home and beat a dead horse here. I have the pleasure of working with professional athletes, okay, either as their doctor and also as their coaches. And the best professional athletes that I've seen are the people who are dedicated to the process, the approach, and the attitude. Some of the big names that you probably know, like Kobe Bryant, rest in peace, LeBron James, Tiger Woods, Serena Williams, Rafael Nadal, all those people. One of the things that they will be constantly focused on is how did they approach it, how was their attitude, and what was their process. Sometimes the commentators or the interviewers will ask them, so, you're batting, 319. Like, so what do you think your average is going to be, toward the end of the season? Their response is, I don't know. And I don't care. All I have control over is my process, my approach, and my attitude. Now, that's a little bit esoteric, and I understand that, but the secret to high closing and high outcomes is not because you're focusing on the outcomes, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and that's so true. And if you're thinking, look, I got to close this project, I have to close all of these projects, the pressure that comes from that comes through your delivery. And when it comes through that delivery and you start feeling, the client starts feeling that you are in some way needy or really have to close this, desperate, like that, it comes through. You can't hide it. If that's truly what's in your mind, you can't hide it. And they can smell it a mile away. And you're like, wait a minute here. How did they know that I got bills to pay and I need this deposit for this project in order to pay those bills or that payroll? How did they know? Like, you would never know if they knew or not. But why didn't I get the opportunity to build this project? Because they could smell that desperation on you. They could smell that. It's part of our wiring as humans. We can tell those things. So what we've learned, what Dan's taught me when I've learned over almost 30 years of doing this, is that if you don't have a systemized way of communicating with your clients, the same thing over and over again, if you can't have the discipline for that, then you're always going to be up to whatever's left. You're going to have the pain of having no process. You're going to have the pain of just kind of winging it each time you go out. That's what I did for years, Dan. That's what I did. I went out and I'm like, yeah, well, I read this in a book. Let me try that on this client. And then I would try it. It would work. And then I would go to the next client and it would fall flat. And I'm like, I don't trust that. How about if I do this? And I would keep doing that over and over again. And eventually I just felt like I didn't know what the heck I was doing. And I was just hopeful that I could get a project, but I felt like I had not control, that I had no influence in how to better serve the client. Once I realized it was about service, not just selling people stuff. It took me way too long to realize that. But once I got on the service side, then I'm like, you know what? How do we do this? And that's when I sought you out. And I was like, okay, we're doing well, but 3 or 5 out of 10 really is not that great. So how do we do it? And I saw how much your process shifted my wife's practice, her chiropractic practice, where she could serve at a level that she wants to serve and get the results that her patients want. And I'm like, could that be transferred into our world, the outdoor living, landscaping, hardscaping world? That same approach. And once we trained and I realized that was the case, and hey, we doubled sales in a year with this new approach. And I'm like, So we basically blended what I was doing with some good, solid fundamentals of sales and got in the process, got the right questions in the right order. And the next thing you know, we started changing lives of companies around the country with that simple idea. And I'm thinking like, wow, wait a minute here. This is crazy. Like, because I was spending an enormous amount of time going out and meeting with clients who weren't saying yes. They were giving me a lot of false yeses. They would say yes, but they never called me back. They'd never actually hire us. They just didn't want to have a confrontation. So they just said, yeah, sounds good. We'll get back to you. And they never did. And I was like, so frustrated. I'm like, I gave them my best ideas. I thought I listened okay. And, just because they have a budget of $100,000 doesn't mean that my idea at 250 isn't good. I'm like, this is what they told me they wanted. Why are they telling me no now? And oh my goodness, like the years that I dealt with that, because I was too prideful to humble my own ass and start asking questions and slowing it down and making it about our clients, not about me, not about the salesperson. When we shift that perspective, it's not what I can get from you, it's how I can serve you. It changes the game. But I had to have an underlying foundational process, something that we always went back to, that foundation that we can constantly say, you know what? If something's not working in our sales process, maybe one of those pieces, one of those tools within that process needs to be tweaked because the world's changed. It just happened with COVID. We've been working for many years doing this sales process in our own company. And then COVID came along and hell, we were order takers.
Yeah.
You didn't have to actually sell anything. You just had to have the availability and the bandwidth and you were in. We were 16 weeks behind on design, just trying to keep up. Like you were just taking orders. It was amazing.
Yeah.
It's not that way anymore.
Nope.
It's 2024. It's not that way anymore. And now we have to be detectives. We have to stand out with our sales approach. We have to really dig deep into our clients. And if you don't have a process, you're going to be winging it, because what worked 2 years ago is not working now. And then you're like, oh, we're back to being stuck again and having sporadic results. And 3 out of 10 is pretty normal. I'm sorry, but life is too precious. Time with my family is too precious to be spending it with people who can't say yes. So we need to have a pre-qualification process. We need to figure out a process that would make this work. And while that might sound like you're putting handcuffs on, I can't be me anymore, that's such BS.
Oh.
It actually becomes an opportunity for you to become even better at who you are, because now you can be more effective and more efficient.
Man. That's really what it is. So one of the things that I often think about is, I'm a big music fan, and I'll see a guitarist or a pianist or a drummer or a bassist, whatever, do a solo, you know what I'm saying? And they're doing solos and they're improvising, right? And they're all, I mean, they are connecting with the audience. You're feeling it, you know, and he's just totally coming up with it at the top of his head or her head. He's like, even singers, they'll take so many liberties and ad-lib lyrics and make these crazy runs that are not scripted, right? This is just from their heart, you know? And that's the stuff that sticks with an audience. You know, I follow a lot of comics because, you know, humor is one of my core values. And some of these comedians are just ridiculous. Like they do crowd work and they just off the top of their head, totally improvising. And, you know, when I study those people, what none of them get any credit for is how fundamentally sound their process is, how fundamentally sound their approach is. So, for example, a musician that is like Jimi Hendrix is one of probably my most favorite improvisers. Like, you know, live shows, they just take 5 minutes and everyone will take turns just improvising. Jimi Hendrix, like everyone knows him. He's such a great artist, whatever. But what he doesn't get credit for is how technically sound he was musically. You know, like he knew his scales. He had incredible technique. He worked on for, I don't know how long or how many hours a day since his childhood. His process was ingrained at a very young age, and he was so technically sound. Singers, how many scales I had to do, how much vocal coaching. Their process was so sound. And it was only then, Josh, when their process and approach was so sound and down pat, where they never missed a lick, literally, was when they were able to actually show their artistry and connect with the rest of the world. You know what I'm saying? That's the best example I have. And now we have salespeople that are winging it in sales every single day. You know what they sound like? They sound like a person who just kind of picks up the guitar once in a while, plays a right note here or there, maybe knows where the rest of the band is doing, maybe, and it gets in front of 2,000 people and starts to improvise. You know, sometimes they get lucky. Most of the time they fall flat. You know what I mean? Process, approach, attitude. Process takes a lot of time to learn a good process, right? Is it the right process? Well, I'm telling you, hanging out here, you have the best process. Tour proven, okay? And this is not, Josh didn't write this up yesterday. This is something he's been doing in his own business for years, right? That's catapulted him to incredible heights. Approach. How do we approach that? The last 3 episodes, we talked about the approach, the curious tone, the STFU. Those are all approaches. And then finally, your attitude. And that's the service attitude that you show up to every one of your clients ready to serve, right? Put all that shit together, man. Unstoppable. Unstoppable. And that's really what this episode is about, isn't it?
It is. It is. And amen to that. And you couldn't have said it any better, of course. And, you know, to paint that picture of, you know, the musician, it's the same. It's those 10,000 hours. You know, you've probably heard of that 10,000 hour rule where, you know, nobody is going to be really good at anything unless they spent a lot of time. And if that's the case, and sales are something that you have to do to get to what you want to do, and you treat it that way, then you're not going to get a lot of what you want to do. You're always going to be struggling, trying to get people to say yes. That's the focus, right? If I could just get them to say yes and give me a check, this would be easy. I don't want to talk to people. I just want to build cool stuff. And I get that. The thing is, this is a soft skill that once it's learned, it becomes part of who you are and how you think. And when that happens, and you actually get that awareness, and you can start asking questions like we had mentioned before about when Mrs. Jones says, I'm looking for a space that's comfortable. If you can even get to that question, and you know, and you have the awareness to know to unpack that, because she's going to give you all the goods right there. And you know to grab that softball and run. Well, actually, you don't run with a softball, but you know what I mean. And throw it, I guess. Not a sports guy here. But anyway, and you know what to do with it, is probably a better way to say it. Then everything changes, right? Because you're being purposeful with how you're acting. So if you really, truly want to build a lot of amazing stuff, you want to build a team, you want to build a company, you want to build your sales, you want to retire early, you want to have financial freedom, whatever your target is, you just want your wife to look at you and be proud of you. Like, if that's what your target is, you want your kids to have a better life, you want them to not have to worry about what you did or what you had to go through, you're going to need to learn soft skills, not just the hard skills. The soft skills are like sales, communication, all of that, which for as guys, Dan, doesn't come as easy as to the ladies.
Oh, it's counterintuitive a lot of the times. Yeah, it's very difficult. I mean, we're not going to downplay it here. It's not easy. That's why the training is so important.
It is. And it's not something just like a gym. I say it to my students all the time. I'm like, if you if you decide to work with us and you come in and just like you went to the gym and you paid the gym your membership fee for a month and you get that to that gym each morning, 5 days a week, and you look in the window, watch everybody working out, turn around and go back home and say, yeah, I went to the gym. Technically, you did go to the gym. But if you aren't lifting, if you aren't running, if you aren't exercising, you're not going to get the cumulative effect of that training, right? You can look from the outside, you can listen to this podcast, you can go on to any other platform that we have or others have out there, and you can watch as a spectator, and you're going to get medium or maybe some results. You're going to go back to your old patterns, of course, or you're going to be courageous and say, you know what, I really want this. I want this not just for me, but for my family, for my employees, for my team members, for my future. I want to learn how to do this. And then you've got to put the gloves on and go in the ring. That's why we role play. It is so important to be able to do that. It's going to make you feel completely uncomfortable. But I know any of the students out there that are listening to this episode, they're going to remember. I mean, I've seen grown former Marines come in and go into tears because they just didn't get it or couldn't get there fast enough. And within like a week or two, they're owning it. It's facing those fears, because when you can finally face those fears and you can finally commit and say, you know what, I'm tired of sporadic results. I'm tired of being the only one in my business who knows how to sell. I'm tired of being stuck in that part all the time. I'm tired of my clients telling me no. I'm tired of expecting 30% closing rate and just being okay with it. I'm tired of just being tired. And I want a way out. I'm not young anymore. I'm 45 years old, Dan. And you know what? When I was 20, I had tons of piss and vinegar. I had tons of time and no money. So I would spend my time out there chasing after leads left and right. And as I got older, I started to have less of a tolerance for that. And I started saying, you know what? I'm not getting my time back. I'm not getting it back. And it's not the right of someone else to be able to have that time unless there's some way that we can both win. That's the only way it works. So for us, developing a process that we could work allowed me to step back from the company and to run a business. And I don't even do most of the sales anymore. My team does. And they learn the process that we teach and they use it every day.
Yep.
And their results are even better than my results because of the process. And that is the key to it all. I'm not trying to sell anybody anything here. Even if it's not my process that you want to work with, find something that you can repeat and define and build a discipline around. Because when you learn this, listeners, when you learn a process that you can go out and communicate with people and serve them at the highest level, just like you've heard the last 4 episodes, or last 3 in this one, is you all of a sudden start building confidence. And when you build confidence, that shows up in your presentation, in your communication with your clients. And when a client feels a certainty and a confidence within the person they're talking about because of a system that they know works, not that they know it's anything to do with the system, but your confidence is built on the fact that you know this works. The next thing you know, you show up different. Because like we talked in the first episode here a couple of weeks ago, was chaos breeds uncertainty. And if a client is uncertain, they're not buying. And if your body language and your tonalities don't match what you're trying to say, they're going to smell it. And you're not going to be able to serve that client. It has to all be uniform and put together. And the way that works is by having a repeatable system.
All day long. Well said.
Well, Dan, I've really appreciated you the last few episodes here. I hope the listeners got a lot from this. I know every time that I chat with you, I always learn stuff too, and I always appreciate that. So listeners out there, if you need help with your sales, if you need help and just want someone to take a look under the hood and get a sense of what's going on, reach out to us. You can reach out to me here at joshua@yes.express. I would love to have a conversation with you. I'm not going to try to sell you anything. I just want to listen to what's going on. Maybe I can give you some pointers so you can get out there and spend more time with your family in profitable projects and not be chasing after the leads that really are just wasting your time and ultimately just want an extra bid so they can pair it against the guy they've already decided to go with. And to be quite honest with you, that's a huge waste of your time. And your number one most valuable asset in your life is time. And you don't realize that until it's counted down the days until you don't have any more. So don't waste it. Don't waste it. Use it correctly. Use it with the right clients. And the only way to do that is by understanding if they are from the very beginning. So Dan, do you have anything else you want to pour into that before we wrap up?
Dude, just get with this guy. It's all I got to say. He has the goods. He has the answer for so many of you that are struggling, converting more leads into paying customers at a very high level. And at the end of the day, you serve them at the highest level possible. It's just an awesome feeling, very fulfilling work, if you ask me. So That's all I got to say. It was awesome hanging out with you for the last 4 episodes. Hope your listeners got something out of it. And that's all I got to say. I'm signing out, man. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you for your time. And listeners, we'll be back with you next week.